Military Review and the Center for Joint Warfare Studies organized a webinar and virtual expo on digitization and networking in the armed forces on 21 to 24 November 2020. The sessions included communication networks of the Army, Navy and Air Force and interoperability, network-centric warfare and how they are undertaken by each service, C4ISR, including the naval experience, the Army's use of UAVs for sea and beyond visual range operations, decision support systems, particularly communication to weapon systems and identifying friend and foe, information, data and big data challenges including information sharing and managing information overload, space domination and satellites by officers from the Defense Space Agency and DIPAC, and new technologies which included artificial intelligence, 5G and Internet of Things.
Jai Hind, General Rawat, the Chief of Defence Staff. Shall we start?
Yes, all yours.
Thank you very much. Jai Hind, everyone. The Chief of the Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat, Chief of the Headquarters Integrated Defence Staff and Chairman St. George, Vice Admiral R. Hari Kumar, Deputy Chief of the Army Staff, General Bhinder, Director General Medcos, Dr. Kamath, former Chief of the Integrated Defence Staff and Advisory Board members of St. George, the DGDIA, General Dharan, Mr. Anand Agarwal of Sterlite, soldiers, sailors, air warriors, veterans, members of scientific community, industry, friends from foreign countries, friends from media, much for being on this very important webinar today. Thank you very much indeed. As we go, I think more and more will join, but those who matter already on this platform, thank you very much indeed. I'm grateful to you. I welcome each one of you on Brahma Center for Joint Warfare Studies and General Ravi Arora of IMR. Thank you very much. Today's topic, as we all know, is digitization networking in the armed forces. This webinar. I need to first thank the Chief of the Defence Staff, General Rawat, for his constant and continuous support, direction, and guidance to Center for Joint Warfare Studies over the years. We have always benefited from your direction and your support. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you indeed. I also must thank our Chairman of Center for Joint Warfare Studies, Admiral Hari Kumar, for his guidance and his support. Without him, we would not be able to conduct what we do. And we always there to address the concerns and further the interests of Headquarters IDS and the armed forces in particular. Thank you very much indeed. I also thank the Chairman DRDO and Dr. Kamath. Even the DRDO Chairman is always very helpful to us. He attended most of our seminars and webinars over the years. Thank you indeed, and the support from Mr. Anand Agarwal. Thank you very much also. I must also thank General Ravi Arora and Air Commodore Chan for curating this event and putting this together and for the conduct. Thank you indeed. Having said the thank yous, now let me get on to the things proper. These are 2020 is a different year altogether. It's a disruptor in many ways. COVID-19 and China have changed the way we behave as individuals, we behave as people, as societies, as nations. It has impacted the emerging world order, and especially for India. Many years I have been attending for the last 6-7 years that I retired, attending many discussions in think tanks, and the strategy community of India always told me, General Sahab, क्या बात करते हो, लड़ाई तो कभी होगी नहीं, ना हुई थी, 71 के बाद ना होगी. Why do you need such armed forces? So my answer to them was that we need peace through military preparedness, and this is something which our CDS General Rawat said a few days back, that we need peace through preparedness. And armed forces are meant to ensure peace and security for the nation. Nations go to war, armed forces do not go to war. Something this a notion we need to dispel. And peace through preparedness is extremely important. And in this world of what is happening now in the last 7, 8 months, especially along the LAC, the two-front war has actually manifested itself in many, many ways. It has woken us up, and we want to thank China in a way that has given us the time to prepare, to focus, and the armed forces have stood up to it, and they have done exceedingly well in giving a resilient response and shown the resilience against the aggressive policies of China along the line of actual control. So this has been a great changer, and the armed forces lived up to it. And thank the leadership for this, for doing what they have done. But what it entails, it entails that the armed forces will be asked to do more and more in less and less. I say that again. The armed forces will be asked, expected, and tasked to do more and more in less and less. And there is where the challenge lies for the military leadership, how to optimize the resources, how to ensure better effectiveness, combat effectiveness, efficacy, logistic support, administration, high standard of training and morale. So that is where the challenge lies, and technology will need to be exploited for this. Today's world is going digital. It's a network world. It's a interconnected world, and digitization, I think, is exceedingly important. And in the emerging world order, which will shape the next decade, will shape the emerging world order. So essentially, India, as a resilient, responsible, resilient power, has a major role to play, and the armed forces are a key element in ensuring national security. So that becomes very important, and it has not only ensure national security, but the armed forces also required to protect and project our national interests, not only within our neighborhood, but all over the world. As a global leader, we have certain responsibilities in the region, extra region, and in the globe. And the armed forces required will be asked to stand up and make sure that India gets its rightful place in the community of nations. And in that, geotechnologies, I think, is going to dictate the world order. It was geopolitics, geostrategy, and are going to be exceedingly important. And that is where I think this webinar takes a lot of importance and to get the shapes right. Technology will drive the transformation. Pandemic has upped the need for digital transformation. It has changed the behavior, like I said. Digitization transformation is a strategic necessity now. It is no longer a desired capability, it's a strategic necessity. And we recognize the importance of digitization. Successful transformation is a big challenge, though. What will digitization accomplish? In simply stated, we are looking at 1/10 the cost, 10% of the cost. We're looking at 10% of the time, that is resource input. And we're looking at 10x as the effectiveness, both organizational effectiveness and operational effectiveness. So that is where I think the digitization is going to be very a force multiplier, as also a force substituter, as we're going to look at force substitution also. Platform and people drive technologies, and we need to exploit the 10 new age technologies, and that will be covered in the session, so I'll not touch upon it. Success will be contingent upon people and processes. We'll need to harmonize technology and organizational strategies. We'll need to overcome resistance to replace legacy systems. And the fourth strategy that I can think of, and these are just the beginning, is rethink the art of possible. We need to move from managing to enabling. We need to harness and exploit technologies, and we will translate purpose into action. At the outset, we'll need to adopt hybrid technologies, working models, as the armed forces need to be present, relevant, and future ready. We cannot just look at the future, we'll also have to be present, relevant, and that is why a hybrid model will have to be adopted initially before the transition is set into place and the transformation complete. And let me also thank the CDS for driving this transformation and making the Indian military from a force to military power, the transformation already been set in, and the number of activities being done. And thank you very much for this. It's much needed, and we look at a transformed military, power, which is the Indian Armed Forces, the military power in the couple of years to come. We also need to focus on threats and opportunities. We need to create a lean, learn it all culture and a future-proof technologies. We need to transform to thrive. We got to fight in the near term and shape the long term. I've taken enough time today. Without much ado, we have an excellent panel in the inaugural session, and thereafter also we got a very eminent speakers, eminent panelists, and eminent chairs. I now hand over to our Chief of the Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat, for inaugural address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you indeed. General Vinod Bhatia, Director St. George, Admiral Hari Kumar, General Ravi Arora, Chief Editor of the Indian Military Review, members of St. George, IMR, DRDO, participants from the industry, academia, our officers from the armed forces who are participating in this webinar, friends from the media, ladies, gentlemen, a very good morning to each one of you. At the very outset, I wish to compliment St. George and Indian Military Review for getting this act together and organizing the webinar and virtual expo on digitization and networking in the armed forces. Well, we are all aware that the manner in which we will be conducting warfare in future is fast changing. The revolution in military affairs with the induction of modern technology, I think we need to now reshape our CONOPS, and with that, the manner in which we will raise, train or sustain our armed forces. So I think the militaries need to completely undergo transformation. And therefore, this webinar is being held at a very apt time when our armed forces are on the cusp of transformation through integration. Modernization in line with the changing global security environment and utmost optimization of resources for greater combat effectiveness is therefore a must. We are sanguine that fruitful discussions on the subject will bring about realization of the desired objectives of the webinar. In today's world, multilateralism, technology challenges, climate change, democracies, and its manifestations are the new norms of geopolitics and geoeconomics. Technology infusion is the buzzword and needs specialization and continuity. Nations are aware that control over technology defines economic, political, and a nation's military power, and hence are aggressively protecting national innovation bases. Warfare is changing, and so are the threats, especially for us in India. There are collusive threats from our neighborhood nations, border intrusions across terrestrial borders, and the new phenomena of multi-front warfare spanning borders, electronic and cyber domain. Given the uncertain environment, we in the armed forces
I think we'll wait for the bandwidth to come back again.
Okay, sir.
There's some issue with bandwidth, I believe. This is
rely on digital technologies, security against cyber attacks become all the more necessary. The phenomena of narrative-driven news or fake news and the instant nature of news gathering and dissemination through the social media is a complex challenge. National security may be adversely impacted by the spread of false news by hostile elements within and outside the country using the social media network. Global pandemic, ecological degradation, and climate change have significant impact on national security, as it could lead to social disruptions and economic distress, undermining domestic security, something which we are witnessing in the difficult and challenging times of COVID. The very character of warfare and providing innovative ways to execute new forms of warfare in the non-contact domain that includes information operations, espionage, stealing intellectual property rights, economic inducements, and what have you, all backed up by clever propaganda and fake news to justify actions. The pursuit of disruptive technologies like artificial intelligence, robotics, nanotechnology, big data analytics, drone technology, autonomous unmanned systems, militarization of space, cyber warfare, quantum communications, along with manipulation of social media, are leading to the new threats and further complicating the security environment. Therefore, enabling technologies such as artificial intelligence and quantum computing are being used to produce sophisticated autonomous weapons which will accelerate the pace of combat, potentially with destabilizing consequences. While these technologies are constantly reshaping the contours of the threat, they also provide us an opportunity to acquire new enabling military capabilities for strategic advantage. The armed forces must therefore be prepared for a future conflict with this changed character. Recent example being the drone strikes targeting Armenian and Nagorno-Karabakh soldiers and destroying their tanks, artillery, and air defense systems by the Azerbaijan forces during the past 44 days of war that they have been. This war offered the clearest evidence of how battlefields can be transformed by an expanding array of relatively low-cost drones at a fraction of a cost of maintaining a traditional air force. The situation also underscored how drones can suddenly shift a long-standing conflict and leave ground forces highly exposed, thus creating an unimaginable exploitation of the kill chain network. The rapid advances in technology reinforce and complement the forces on land, sea, and in the air, while the synergized application of military power at the theater, operational, and tactical levels is the essence of winning future wars. However, the present environment and the future trends indicate a host of challenges that we need to overcome. We have to remain prepared to confront the growing military capabilities of our adversaries, the hybrid imprint, collusivity, and threats posed through emerging technologies. Needless to say, we cannot fight the next war premised on the experiences and structures of our past wars. This mandates the armed forces to prepare for operating in expanding strategic horizon. War-winning operational capabilities generated through tri-services integration, innovation, and infusion of cutting-edge technology, along with infrastructure development, are thus major imperatives. Towards this, we are in the process of evolving our structures and systems. A series of initiatives are being undertaken that will change the way we fight and the way we develop capability, whose aggregate effect would gradually build momentum. We have therefore set timelines for the transformation to be effected with adequate headroom for us to modernize. In the first year, we are examining and evolving concepts, which will be followed by a year dedicated to trials, test bedding, and aligning of structures. The next 2 years would eventuate in stabilization of integrated structures and processes. World over, jointness and integration within the militaries has taken time to evolve, rather, or are still evolving. Today, we are evolving structures and processes to meet the challenges posed by both conventional and non-conventional threats. Joint study groups on integrated air defense command, integrated theatre commands, and maritime theatre command have brought out their papers, and these are being iterated, deliberated, and further refined so that firm steps can be taken to operationalize them in the next 2 to 3 years. We are also examining the feasibility of a concept of joint logistics command that would, in addition to the competencies of our services, draw from the strengths of the existing civilian infrastructure that is fast evolving in our country. We also need to look at our teeth to tail ratios and become leaner and meaner in consonance with the armed forces increasing reliance on technology like big data analysis, artificial intelligence, and our attempts towards greater standardization. Therefore, what is the way forward for us in the future? I think the most important is capability development. In the matrix of inclusive growth of the nation, it is imperative to achieve technological progression and indigenized capability building towards self-reliance for supporting a nation's progress on all fronts. Credibility comes from capability. Towards this, we have set for ourselves a roadmap to identify 360 degrees approach of capability development and force structuring for a modernized force primed to meet emerging and future challenges. For efficient and optimal management of the allotted budget, Headquarter Integrated Defence Staff has drawn out a framework to enhance integration and jointness in capability planning. This framework-bound process is termed as the Integrated Capability Development System, or ICADS, and will lead up to formulation of the Integrated Capability Development Plan, or ICDP. The process has been set in motion in August 2020 this year, and the deliverables are expected by the mid of next year. And therefore, what changes are we witnessing in the procurement process? As far as defense procurements are concerned, efforts towards streamlining the processes and structures for optimal and most efficient management of our allotted budget are being undertaken. We understand the importance of indigenization to achieve self-reliance in equipping our armed forces. I must acknowledge the commitment of all stakeholders, including the civilian defense industries, which are making adequate headway towards supplementing our modernization efforts. Our nation's aspiration of becoming a regional power cannot rely on borrowed strengths. India's wars have to be won with Indian solutions. Indigenization is the way forward, and we are fully committed to it. The existing segregated nature of defense and commercial industry ecosystems restrict our capabilities and capacities for making defense equipment. Integrating civil and military technology efforts is the way forward towards self-reliance. Cooperation between government and commercial facilities in research and development, manufacturing, maintenance operations, combined production of similar components and sub-components on same production lines will optimize commercial and defense industrial base to maximize resource utilization and reduce manufacturing and life cycle costs for defense equipment. The recent setting up of 8 advanced technology centers by DRDO in September this year to carry out research on futuristic military applications and unveiling of its new procurement manual on 20th of October this year by the Honorable Raksha Mantri to encourage private sector partnerships are steps in this direction in sync with the government's Atmanirbhar initiative. The contracting envelope of the defense budget makes it all the more imperative to create dual-use infrastructure to civil-military fusion. We must examine the feasibility of integrating civil-military airports to strengthen aviation safety, airspace management, and combat support capabilities. Satellites for remote sensing and reconnaissance, communication, positioning, and navigation must also meet requirements of the armed forces with desired inbuilt encryptions. Railway wagons and civil truck trailers must be manufactured for dual use, capable of transporting heavy military equipment, including armored fighting vehicles. Construction of communication towers and electricity infrastructure, along with rail, roads, bridges, and tunnels in border states must be of specifications that facilitate utilization by the armed forces as well. We must look at civil-military convergence on storage and warehousing facilities for fuel, oil, lubricants, rations, and ordnance supplies. Civil-military integration in infrastructure development holds the key to whole-of-nation approach towards our national security. And with this to conclude, ladies and gentlemen, a roadmap for the future is being put in place to enhance integration and synergy amongst the Indian Armed Forces with time-bound timelines. I am certain the webinar and virtual expo on digitization and networking will bring out ways and means to further the network-centering warfare ability of our armed forces by focusing on integrating communications and control, situation awareness, and common operational picture, communications for kinetic operations, evolved cyber and space prowess, and collaboration between the tri-services. Ladies and gentlemen, I have highlighted just a few of the challenges that we face, and I am sanguine that many of these will be deliberated upon in greater length, and a very constructive feedback would be generated at the end of this webinar. Best wishes to all of you participating in this webinar, and Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, General Vipin Rawat. Thank you so very much for this transformation roadmap, the contours, the timelines, and giving us the directions and the guidelines. And we assure you that we'll come back with a proper feedback, which is implementable, and we'll call out all that has been discussed during the next 2 days in this seminar. I really can't thank you enough, but we take home all the points you've given, and credibility comes to capabilities, and the transformation which you have set in as the Chief of the Defense Staff will go a long way in transforming the Indian Armed Forces to a military power. Thank you very much indeed. I now call upon Dr. Kamath, the DG Medcos, to deliver his special address. Over to Dr. Kamath, please.
Thank you very much, General Bhatia. Good morning to all of you. Respected General Vipin Rawat ji, Chief of Defense Staff, Vice Admiral R. Hari Kumar, CISC, Lieutenant General A.S. Binder, Deputy Chief of Army Staff, Dr. Anand Agrawal, CEO, Sterlite Technology Limited, and the participants in this webinar. I welcome you all for this webinar, and thank you, Colonel Vinod Bhatia ji. I would like to give my talk with some presentation. I request to enable the share my presentation, please. Thank you very much. So my presentation is on cutting edge of technologies for the network battlefield. I would like to thank CDS for setting the tone for my talk also, where some of the technologies as mentioned, I'll be briefly touching upon what DRDO is doing, and in general what we should look into it. If to start with, I would like to keep the concept of combat operation process, OODA system, where we know, all of us, we know the observe, orient, decide, and act is the concept which is being used. And with the technology and the advancement, sensing, situation awareness, and planning generation, etc., is being added. And as the technology progressed, the actual system support and virtual team member and autonomous decision-making mechanism need to be added to this. The connected battlefield, as such, all of us, we know from conventional battlefield systems like radars, or we have various type of missile system, ADS systems, ICBMs, mobile SAMs, and other systems, which is all now connected along with the satellite observatory, and all this connection with the computer network attack system is also possible. Now, all this, when you have a battlefield scenario, various paraphernalia which is connected with the network, we need to actually look into what are the various sensors which is available in the network. As you know that earlier, the sensor networks are mostly the mobiles and other hardwares. Now it is getting added with various sensors apart from radar systems, and also observatory from satellites. And all these things are getting connected with the various networks, whether it is Wi-Fi, Ethernet, LAN, WAN network systems, and all this data which is available getting accumulated into the centralized system, where other than this defense observatory or other modules which is available as a sensor, we also need to have the, one second. Yeah, I think partially, I hope everybody is able to see the presentation completely. The environment, the energy system, the transportation details and surveillance details, as well as border surveillance need to be, this data need to be added in the whole network. Now, when you talk about so many sensors being available, and as we go on, the various sensors are getting added day by day, we need to have a infinite or huge computing requirement, huge storage requirement, because as it has already been said, the data is a knowledge, and knowledge is the strength for fighting future war battle. And to have such a huge data to be stored, we need to have a various type of storage mechanisms, such as other than the localized storage, we need to have a distributed storage, and also with time to come, the cloud and virtual storage mechanism. And when you have so much data coming in, we need to also have the various types of internet connectivity with a very infinite bandwidth, which can be achieved not only by 5G, but various futuristic technology like DWDMs, and also various type of secured routing facilities. All this data, once it is available, we need to also draw the conclusions out of this data, and for that we need to have a huge computing requirement, where HPC presently GPU based, CPU based, depending on data which we are having, need to be strengthened. Also, the quantum computer, as it has been touched upon, need to also, this technology which is going to come in decades to come, which is slowly progressing very fast in the world, need to be utilized to make decision making faster and faster. And all this we can achieve by using the AI, artificial intelligence enabled autonomous systems, and also the cloud infrastructure which is in place. Now, when we talk about all these three type of domain, we need to have we come to a cyber security challenges, where the hyper-connected cyber physical infrastructure needs to have the devices connected. All the devices, mostly I think as it is expected that each device which is being used may have connectivity to 1:5. And when such things are there, the availability, affordability, and accessibility are one of the challenges. Governance, healthcare, transport, energy, and manufacturing is also getting added to the infrastructure. Variety of devices and functionalities are also getting added. In such a scenario, we have challenges like large infrastructures, identity, privacy issues are becoming more and more critical. The existing cybersecurity solutions have not been tested at the actual scale level, which is required. Lack of validation of testbed capabilities of simulating these complexity and fidelity are also required to be, they are the challenges at present when you are having such a cyberspace. Now, when you have such a cyberspace, building the cybersecurity is also one of the important challenges, where, once again, yeah, lightweight, when you have such a cyberspace, we need to see the sector, all the data which is available, and that can be achieved by having lightweight cryptography or physical cryptography, and also tamper-proof trusted systems, architecture for a secure flow of management and the control panel data. And all this is possible by having trusted supply chains, monitoring and various responses, and also secure data storage and management. Malware detection and analysis is one of the very important area, and disaster management in case there is a disaster, not physical disaster, but in cyber disaster, how to manage the show and how still we keep going. Now, in Indian scenario, we have a lot of challenges when you talk about cyberspace, because most of the infrastructure components are cost-based and cannot be depended upon. And use of information assurances technology to mitigate the risk is essential. And in this scenario, the need of end-to-end approach of IA, that is information assurance technology, infrastructure need to be built, where trusted acquisition and evaluation and deployment is required. The architecture with building a security, supply chain control is essential. As you all know, that most of the parts components, if it is coming from adversaries countries, then I think we need to be more careful. Trustworthy and indigenous development is also one of the key. Development of insertion of IA technology and security evaluation, security audits need to be done periodically to ensure that we don't get into problem. In this direction, DRDO has contributed to a large extent, and in providing the end-to-end protection, endpoint protection by building trusted and safe use of POTS platforms, secured storage. In the communication area, we have secured telephones, secured mobile devices also is being developed, the secured media transfer devices, secured CDRs, and secured SATCOM terminals are being developed. Secure communication and LAN-WAN techniques, here bulk encryptors and IP encryptors are also being developed. Information security policy enforcement has been done by having a proper policy in place. And also the detection and alert solutions and data transfer enabling also been done. In the infrastructure side, the gateway solution for network control is access and control is also been provided. With this, then what we have to look for is next generation communication technologies, which is coming in place in future when aware enhancement and evaluation of higher network speed. Convergence of infrastructure is also coming in place, where various types of data, video, and devices are getting converged in single devices. Everything on the cloud is likely to happen in future. Immersive experiences like is possible, because when you have lifetime media everywhere, then I think and virtual reality in place, the immersive technology also comes in place. Along with that, the continuity, the web connectivity of things, that human-centric and limited connections of IoTs are also going to come in future. The real-time remote controls are also going to be reality in shortly. Now, all these things are possible. Along with that, now the new generation network, which is going to come presently, as you all know, present structure has a vertical independent. Although the internet connectivities are there, the networks are independent. Like mobile network is separately providing all the services, whereas the PSTN, ISDN, and as well as data and IP networks are separate. They are all separate vertical. Though the partial connectivities are present there, the new generation network will be having the horizontal networking facility, where all these services will be available through a single network. This is the future which is going to be happening in shortly. Now, coming to convergence of a new generation network, the convergence of a network which includes the fixed mobile convergence and third screen convergence, mobile TV as well as the computer is likely to take place in future. The service convergence, like traditional and new services, like multiplicity of devices, industry and market convergence, device convergence, like microprocessors, screens, storage, IP devices, and other network connections are likely to be converged in the future to come in the new generation networks. The convergence experience will provide a lot of opportunities and new experiences for the users. With this, we have the new trends also setting in, where 5G technology is likely to come shortly, and terahertz technology, which I are going to touch upon, is also in the in the development. In the new generation network, we have AI-enabled IoTs, the fog radio access network, and sociocast. All these things are possible. And as you know, with the new technology coming in, that is dense wave division multiplexing, we have more, around 80% of the new software will be available in the cloud services. Around 58% of internet traffic will be available in video. And now at present, as the year is passing by, more than 20 billion smart devices are already getting connected. With these challenges, we have new emerging technologies, which is also coming, where hardware authentication is very, very important, because as you know, that it has been already been brought out by CDS. The cyber security challenges can be one of the key area. So when we have everything, all the functioning on the through the net or digitization area, it is also important to have a proper authentication of hardware, which is right now the password user by the username driven and token driven. It may also need to have more critical technologies like user behavior analysis based authentication by using deep learning, because it is not necessary that only by having username, password, and token we are still securing our hardware, but it is need to be having some more intelligence where the system itself can detect the proper user by having the analysis of his behavior. And we need to also protect the data from losing it, because data is very critical, and that can be done by again having encrypted data on the cloud as well as by tokenization. Now coming to intelligence IoT, because IoT devices generally right now maybe sometimes passive, but it needs to be made. It is with time to come, it is going to become more and more intelligent, and by that it is going to add more information and more inputs to the users of these devices. As it is said, the actionable intelligence from the IoT sources hinges upon access to the meaningful structured information collection. It is not just the data, it is also the information which IoT devices can provide, and also it can also give up to some extent the knowledge. This is going to be future of IoT devices. Now, in the intelligence IoT device, how it is going to be useful in warfare is the intelligence and the autonomous vehicles, which has been already talked about. Unmanned weapon systems like unmanned aerial systems, surface vehicles, as well as underwater vehicles, which can be utilized more and more in the military applications. And automatically, they could actually take the action on its own up to most of the time, of course, unless we have still we have the last control with us. Similarly, AI-enabled data fusion, information processing, and intelligence analysis need to be done. The cognitive radio and cognitive electronics warfare will be added along with this intelligent IoT device-based warfare. And when all these things are happening, we cannot be neglecting cyber defense and cyber warfare, because the moment all the devices and systems are connected to the net, it becomes network-centric. It is also important that we should protect this network infrastructure and the cyberspace of our defense. Now coming to the futuristic communication side, where we need to have, we know that apart from 5G now, the technology is going for a terahertz technology, where the frequency will be more than hundreds of gigahertz. And by doing that, we will have a high-speed wireless extension of the optical fiber beyond 5G, and the frequency, which, as I said, up to 100 to 10 terahertz, 100 gigahertz to 10 terahertz frequency range. That will actually enable location between the millimeter wave and optical frequency band. And also, because the frequency is going higher and higher, the range will become small, that is up to 1 kilometer. And then this actually ensures the more secure communication, because range is smaller and information can be read with proper security. It may also add seamless connections between the ultra-high-speed wireless network and full transparency and the rate convergence between the wireless and wired links. In fact, when you say about all this, as it has been already said, that we need to, the armed forces are asking, I mean, its requirement is coming for more and more for less and less, as it has been said, with less time, with the minimum time we need to take a decision when all these technologies are evolving for the bigger things. And to that to happen, terahertz communication, very high speed communication is going to play a major role in the future to come. Now, the another technology which is going to be very, very useful is on the image processing. Though it is actually complementing the network-centric battlefield. As you know, most of the things are now monitored through camera, and we can now have a change detection in place by having all this information in store. We would like to, the AI technology can be used with the deep learning, as well as other techniques can be used for detection of the change. Video snapping can be done, and by using the other database which is developed by DRDO, it can also be used for object detection and the activity analysis, which will be very, very useful to in the present scenario for the battlefield, as well in the border area, as well as within the society to monitor the miscreants. And there are also other techniques like multi-sensor data fusion, which can help the armed forces for the decision making. That because when you have number of data, number of information coming together, the fusion of those data analysis and then bringing a real picture to make the decision making simpler is going to be critical in the future. Motion detection and tracking, and also 3D reconstruction and object localization for battlefield area is going to be one of the very important technology for the future, along with the target detection. And also, as it has also already been said in the recent time, the multi-robot visual SLAM can be utilized for with a simpler commercial robot to diffuse the costly and very high-value defense establishments. And these are the technologies. Some of the technologies I have touched upon. There are many more, because when we say it is net-centric, we need to also understand that if all this infrastructure in place may not have any effect if you do not have a network in place, and if network is crippled by various other technologies, which I am not going to talk this time, but there are other techniques which can be utilized to cripple the whole network, and any strength in computing, any strength in data can be completely paralyzed by other technologies which is available, may not be relevant for this particular topic. So I am not going to touch upon. I thought with the shortest possible time, whatever critical technologies which is available in the world and what is going to come, I have touched upon, for which I think the DRDO has to look into it and started working on this area, and armed forces also need to look into these technologies. I once again thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share some of the technologies to the viewers. Thank you very much. And Jai Hind.
Thank you, Dr. Kamath. Thank you so very much. There's no doubt that the DRDO is the most important contributor, the most critical contributor to technologies, not only for the armed forces, but for the nation. And it is the DRDO is going to identify, indigenize the technologies for Indian conditions, for Indian warfare conditions, and for India, as it was said earlier by the Chief of the Defense Staff. Thank you so very much. I now call upon Admiral R. Harikumar, the Chairman St. George and CIS, to deliver the special address. Over to Admiral Harikumar, please.
Thank you, sir. General Bipin Rawat, Chief of Defense Staff, General Bhatia, Director St. George, Dr. Kamath, the senior officers, flag officers, general officers, veterans, serving officers, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to all of you. It's a privilege for me to be part of this webinar on digitization and networking in the armed forces. I'm honored to address this August gathering and share my thoughts on fusion between the civil and military technologies. I intend to cover my talk in 4 parts. I'll talk about the IT RMA, which is underway, a bit about the future warfare, then the military-civil fusion, and the way ahead. Albin and Heidi Toffler talked of a military revolution in its fullest sense occurs only when a new civilization arises to challenge the old, when an entire society transforms itself, forcing its armed forces to change at every level simultaneously, from technology and culture to organization, strategy, tactics, training, doctrine, and logistics. We in the Armed Forces of India, today we are going through such a transformation. This has been initiated as the CDS had brought out in its talk. And for us, an IT RMA is something that we need to look at and take forward in full earnestness. An IT RMA would emphasize the contribution of data and analysis to the effectiveness of future warfighters and their weapons, and it would focus less on mass and more on the role of knowledge in making weapons more accurate and deadly. It will result in the ability to process information faster and to respond to tactical and operational intelligence with greater accuracy and fewer delays, with increased lethality even as the weapons become lighter or smaller. The net-centric warfare exploits technology to shift from the platform-centric ops to net-centric ops. Networks harness the power of geographically dispersed nodes, be it ships, aircraft, drones, submarines, soldiers, operational formations, etc., and linking them into networks like the World Wide Web for very rapid, high volume transmission of digitized data. This networking has potential to increase exponentially the capabilities of individual nodes or groups of nodes to facilitate efficient use of resources. The core idea of net-centric transformation is therefore to take advantage of the modern communication technology to change the way we fight. It requires more changes in military communication than in any other area of technology. Therefore, we are working on joint waveforms which will help in joint communications as part of the joint network. The core idea of net-centric transformation thus takes advantages of this. Implementing of net-centric warfare thus calls for innovative hardware, software, as well as organization and new systems which separate the different layers of communication from the lower layer, the higher layer, as well as the different systems for local as well as high-speed situational awareness and for reach back to the higher headquarters. When such net-centric warfare is implemented, the unit cost of platforms and munitions may drop, but provided the investment in the communication is adequate and robust. The net-centric warfare transformation therefore demands a new focus on network security, including stronger codes, radio links that are more difficult to intercept, new techniques that prevent our enemies from broadcasting false data to the networks. A very interesting aspect is that while technology is always flowed between the military use and the civilian use, particularly in the IT, in the case of IT and networking, we have seen tremendous advances in the civilian sector. While originally the computers and networking had its start at the military for military purposes in its early stages. Coming to the future warfare, General George Marshall had said that we must study the first 6 months of the next war. So often there is reference that we are tied down with the last war that we fought. There has to be a conscious effort to look forward and anticipate what is in the offing. If we look around what is happening in Syria, in Azerbaijan, and so on, we see that there has been a tremendous increase in the rate of fire due to intelligence systems. This has resulted in reduced time between target detection or identification and the time that they are attacked. A typical example was in Ukraine-Russia, between Ukraine and Russia in 2014, where the Russian spotter drones detected the Ukrainian forces, and within a matter of a few minutes, the precision rocket artillery had wiped out these forces from the map. Similarly, the autonomous military that had been talked about, autonomous forces, they will need less food, less fuel, less manning. Advanced manufacturing methods like the 3D printing will reduce the need for vast, risky and expensive military logistics networks by enabling production of complicated spare parts or goods at the point of demand very quickly, cheaply and easily. Military consisting of small numbers of large, expensive, heavily manned, hard to replace systems may find it difficult to survive in the future battlefield, where swarms of intelligent machines will deliver violence at a greater volume and higher velocity than ever before. Success will therefore require a different kind of military built around large numbers of small, inexpensive, expendable and highly autonomous systems. We need to study and take lessons from the ongoing Azerbaijan-Armenia conflict as well as the conflict happening in Syria. AI is definitely set to revolutionize warfare. It's particularly useful in improving situational awareness on the battlefield and the commander's ability to make decisions and communicate orders. So quantum technology, quantum materials, quantum computing and simulation, quantum communications and cryptanalysis, quantum sensors for detection of submarines, aircraft, various types of modern gravimeters for navigation, weapon delivery, the hypersonic strike capability with the use of hypersonic glide vessels with MIRVs. So all this are technologies which need to be progressed, and these have been taken up with the appropriate institutions in our country. Our military modernization therefore must focus on systems that can be combined into networks or kill chains to achieve the desired military outcome, be it air superiority or control of the seas, and the belief that software merely supports hardware also needs to be inverted. Many of the future technology will be distinguished by the quality of the software, especially when it comes to weapons that are enabled by AI or big data. A little bit about the military-civil fusion. This is a technical term for a very simple idea. As I said, the intermingling of technology or the use of technology between the military as well as the civilian sectors have always been in existence. But currently, this the name has been given prominence by China. China is attempting to get the emerging and advanced technology towards building the most technically advanced military. Now, this effort has started sometime in 2009, and this military-civil fusion has been elevated to a national level strategy under the current leadership. Private companies, academic institutions, research institutions anywhere in the world which collaborate with similar institutions in China are therefore at risk of unwittingly contributing to the PLA capabilities, especially with regard to the dual-use technologies. China-based partners in joint ventures, joint companies are also required to share any technology that is found useful by the PLA under the penalty of law. So this strategy removes the barriers between the China's military-industrial complex and the civilian economy. We also find that there are over 25 institutions of the PLA which involve deep research into high-tech areas. One such institution, just to mention, is called the Military Civil Fusion Intelligence Equipment Research Institute. So this just shows the type of effort that is going on to ensure that the cutting edge technology is made available to the armed forces and to harness it to in a weaponized manner. China is therefore attempting to achieve control of the international information flows. It's aiming at global info superiority, and MCF, Military Civil Fusion, has yielded for it great results. When you look at the Baidu, smart cities, the facial recognition for surveillance systems that it is incorporated in the country, navigation for various platforms, vehicles, cars, and so on, the 5G network system that China is propagating. So while all countries do attempt to leverage the civilian technology for military purposes to varying degrees of success, China has particularly been able to do it because of its the system of governance prevalent there. In democratic countries like ours, the requirements of transparency, IPR, private enterprise, and adherence to international agreements all impose limitations. But we need to work within these limitations to see that we harness the advances that are being made in the civilian sector for the benefit of the military. The implications of exponential growth will always continue to elude us because we are used to a linear approach in most things. But currently, the tide of exponential technology, where performance is rising exponentially and costs are falling exponentially, will make many things previously considered impossible very much possible in entirely unbelievable ways and in unimaginable timelines. So therefore, we need to put in great effort to ensure that we harness the advances that are being made in the civilian sector. But coming to the way ahead, we feel that we also need to introduce and advanced technologies for our own military. A focused capability development effort is required to harness the dual-use technologies fully. We need to develop the robust information exchange mechanism between the armed forces, the DRDO, private industry, and academia on the latest technology impacting warfare. At the same time, I would like to also mention that historically, it has been recorded that an extraordinary proportion of technological knowledge and innovations during the 19th and the 20th century came not from government laboratories or government organizations, but they came from hobbyists, enthusiasts, priests, rectors, and so on. There are any number of examples on this. When you look at Reverend Thomas Bayes, the Bayesian formulae, Thomas Malthus, George Garrett, and so on. The whole lot of long list of inventors are there who have primarily hobbyists and rectors. Why I'm trying to mention this here is that the term serendipity is of relevance when we are looking at innovation. The most important advances are usually the least predictable ones. And the term serendipity was coined by the writer Hugh Walpole, who derived it from a fairy tale, The Three Princes of Serendip. These princes were always making discoveries by accident or sagacity of things that they were not in search of. So, for example, the discovery of chemotherapy happened when carrying troops and mustard gas was bombed off the coast of Italy. It just so happened that they found that these soldiers who were suffering from cancer got cured. So there are many instances of serendipitous discovery or development of innovative products. So what I would like to bring out is that the users need to be involved. The users, the enthusiasts, the hobbyists, the people who are who are working on working and using equipment. They're the ones who will have a whole lot of ideas which can improve a product or come up with alternate ways of doing a thing better. So towards this, the IDEX Fauji, we feel are app platforms which have been recently promulgated by the DDP to encourage such users and provide a platform for them to contribute to indigenization and innovation. Similarly, the Indian Defence University is also being looked at as a premier institution to facilitate research in emerging and future technologies. We are looking at identifying these dual-use technologies available with the private sector, especially in command and control, communication, computers, networking, and so on, and modify them for the military use. We also are studying decision support systems which are available with the industry and see how they can be adapted for use along with AI for military applications. Development of micro or nano satellites, launch on demand capability in the service sector, where we feel that the civil sector in our country has already reached a fairly advanced stage. Similarly, collaborations in the cyber domain and development of indigenous network kill chains in the multi-domain sector is something that is being pursued. We are also looking at in the process of creating incubation centers, centers of excellence, and chairs of excellence at the academic and research institutions of prominence in our country. And there is greater encouragement for participation by both military as well as civil personnel in doctoral and postdoctoral research work. And we hope that this will result in our ability to harness the civilian technology for military purposes. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, I wish the digitization and networking in the Armed Forces webinar great success. And I'm sure that many useful ideas will emerge and suggest ways forward for fusion between the military and civil technology. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Kumar. Thank you so very much for your talk. It was excellent, and you've given us some good ideas. And one of them, I must say, it's not really technology alone. It is study the first 6 months of next fall. I think this is something exceedingly interesting. This is an idea which we need to carry forward. And you spoke about technologies, and you spoke about serendipity, IDEX, and a number of other things. I think that the way forward is to move together as a nation with all stakeholders, including some people who are considered to be, outside the society. These are geniuses who can contribute a lot. But having said that, let me also say that the Technology Information and Forecasting Assessment Council has come out with the Technology Vision 2035 document under the Department of Science and Technology. It lays down the technology vision of the country till 2035. Unfortunately, it does not give ample stress to technologies for defense, but the fact remains that whatever they do, these can be identified, absorbed, and adopted for defense and military purposes also. Thank you very much. I know we are running a little out of time. I now request General Bhinder, the Deputy Chief of the Army Staff, to deliver a special address, and I must thank him for driving the initiative. It has been his initiative. He is the one who has pushed us to get everything in order. Thank you very much, General Bender. Over to General Bender.
Once again, sir, General Bipin Rawat, Chief of Defence Staff, esteemed speakers and participants, thank you for inviting me to the introductory session of St. John's webinar on digitization and networking in the armed forces. The theme of my address is structures and systems for exploiting technologies in the Indian Armed Forces. As we all know, warfare has evolved through the ages in eras which were defined by the predominance of attrition and maneuver till the recent times, wherein information has emerged as the predominant factor in establishing supremacy over the adversary. The needs for digitization and networking range from operational logistics, information and decision support systems, and peacetime requirements of procurements for capability development, sustenance, supply chain management, recruitment, and human resource development. Given the size of the Indian Army and the nature of warfare, these needs are large in range of functionalities, distributed over vast geographical areas all across the country, and involve a large number of hierarchical and lateral organizational linkages. Therefore, the need for digitization and networking has assumed utmost importance to flatten the hierarchy, reduce the operational pause, and enhance precision with increase in the speed of control. We in the Army, we are looking at a digital army with a need-based automation support system, and which is managed through the robust and cyber-safe networks. We are looking at access to enterprise-wide credible data, comprehensive information support, and centralized data governance. We are working towards platforms with built-in integration tools, high-speed networks, Army cloud services with browser access. We are seeking all this through affordable and flexible developments, agile processes that can go live fast, and short iterative development cycles. Obviously, we have certain challenges which are well known to most of the participants who are here, but just to highlight a few, we have issues with integration and interoperability. Given that there is a large number of organizations within the Army, and as well as the needs for integration at the three services, there is a need to evolve a common approach for developing adaptation and customization of products and standards to accommodate legacy systems and its transition in support of jointness in the armed forces. There is also a need to evolve process of standardization for achieving interoperability between disparate systems and applications. We also would like to have maximum indigenization of systems in order to be in a dominating position in the field of automation and digitization. We must develop these through indigenous operating systems and geographical information systems for the defense forces, with standard protocols to be laid down for data exchange. In future, it is also absolutely essential that we develop our own chip technology and lay down guidelines and rules for cryptography, cyber warfare, and policies on information assurances to protect our networks and databases. The human resource development and upskilling. Given the vast requirements of the human resource in the armed forces, which have to operate in various geographical locations, have their own HR requirements for progression through the career, there is also a need to develop a core set of people who can support the ingestion of technology in terms of digitization and networks. We also are looking at constraints of physical space in platforms, in the military platforms, combat systems, and bandwidth on the battlefield. And therefore, for the mobility of the system, there is a requirement to have light softwares and manufacturing miniaturized rugged software. Data management in itself is a challenge given the size, the scope of the requirement in the armed forces. This needs to be automated and managed in a meticulous manner. It also requires to ensure authenticity and integrity of data along with the defined data ownership. With multiple users and owners, certain applications already developed and launched, certain applications being developed, there is a requirement for clear-cut foundations for single source of truth of data in the management of future operational stroke management information systems. We are facing a lot of changes in the security environment. The cyber environment is ever changing with more of our systems in the digital domain. Loss of sensitive military information will always be a concern, as also the disruption in our conduct of operations. Therefore, there is a need to have a robust cyber security method and an organization to support these changes. We have heard about the emerging technologies, particularly the civilian technologies, which have a dual use, which need to be adapted for use into the Indian Army and the armed forces. We have things like the artificial intelligence and big data available with the civil domain. However, we need to adapt this to the systems and the applications that we develop for the armed forces. We need an agile procurement process. In that, Chapter 8 in the new DAP 2020 is a welcome step. We are looking for similar changes in the DPM so that we are able to engage and have hand-holding arrangements with civil domain, the experts who are there willing to serve the nation and participate in the development of applications for the Army. However, we need to overcome certain wrinkles in the procedural process. We also need to tap the abundant civil IT qualified HR. The information technology, human resource potential of our country is world renowned. While there are many technical professionals who are eagerly willing to serve the nation and participate along with the armed forces, we need to facilitate this by certain processes and procedures which can enable them to participate in our progress. We need to also involve the academia and the startups in our processes. A lot of work has been done in this, but it is still a work in progress. The needs of a governmental procurement system needs to be taken care of and suitably tweaked to make sure that we are able to derive maximum benefit from this. Now, coming to certain structures and the systems in the armed forces to ingest technology, we are undertaking restructuring of our internal organizations to support digital transformation that have also been initiated and implemented. At the tri-services level, a major restructuring is in progress. As you are all aware, the first tri-service organization to enable integration and interoperability was the Headquarters Integrated Defence Staff, who is responsible for formulating the long-term integrated plan and the 5-year defense plan based on the anticipated threat perceptions and the force structures, modernization, development of the equipment and funds. The creation of the post of Chief of Defence Staff in January 2020 has given a major impetus to streamlining joint cyber and ICT warfare strategy. Recently constituted integrated functional commands under the integrated defense staffs include the Defense Cyber Agency, the Defense Space Agency, and the Special Operations Division to exploit military capabilities in the cyberspace besides space and special operations. Within the Army headquarters is well structured to have a convergence between signals, which look after the maximum information communication needs of the Indian Army, and the DG information systems, which is responsible for planning as well as executing the projects for bringing in applications and softwares into the Indian Army. Both of these converge under the appointment that I hold, that is of the Deputy Chief of Army Staff, Integrated Systems, Info Systems, and Coordination. Now, the major change that has taken place with the reorganization of the Army headquarters is the bringing together of the revenue procurements and the capital procurements under the Deputy Chief of Army Staff Capability Development and Sustenance. This will further streamline any gaps that were between the revenue and the capital procurement. The Army Cyber Group has been expanded to safeguard our safety interests in the digitization process. And under the Defense Cyber Agency, the efforts of the 3 cyber groups are being integrated and are being streamlined in a focused manner. We are also aware of the Army Design Bureau, which has also been created to synergize the efforts with academia and the startups. The Indian Army and the services have been seized of these issues and are working to streamline the structures and systems for exploiting technologies in the Army. As far as the systems are concerned, we have at the tri-service level the Defense Communication Network, a nationwide strategic network which has been already operationalized. The NFS project for the Indian Army, with a backbone of optical fiber across the country and a redundancy built in with the other systems, including the satellite system, is going to be operationalized very soon. With this, we have the media connectivity to be able to run any kind of digitization and software and applications at a nationwide, army-wide, as well as services-wide status. At the Indian Army level, we also have a pan-Indian Army operational and management applications like the MISO, which has MISO 2.0, which has been launched. We have the IACCCS, which is also called Project Shakti, which is with the artillery, and we have many other projects which have run out distance and are now being either modified or are being tuned in times with the technologies that are available and the new and emerging technologies. Things like the project of Combat Information Decision Support System was a long project which has given us a very valuable experience, which we will now introduce into anything that we undertake hereafter. Our methodology for development of info system applications has also undergone a radical change with thrust towards quick induction of applications, agnostic to the hardware and operating systems. Our data governance policy has been formulated and is going to be published in the next month. And this will facilitate all kinds of development of information systems and applications across various organizations within the Army, ensuring that they are able to speak to each other at any given point in time in future. Indian Army has also many successful projects which have already been towards digitization and network, which are already functional, like the AWAN, Shakti, ECR, MISO, the CICG mega project, which are already been operationalized and are working. As we go forward, we are looking at a pan-Army information system to integrate all operational and management information systems. In the interim, we are working at an API-based integration of current and under development applications to ensure whatever we have is integrated at the earliest. During the webinar, as we go forward, you will hear more of this from speakers who head these endeavors. During the conduct of the seminar, all these issues will be discussed in greater detail, I'm sure. Some of the things that we could also look at and watch out for is methods for a collaborative approach with organizations like the MeitY, which has shown us positive results in a couple of engagements. Change in revenue procurement processes for IT systems, as I brought out earlier, on the lines of the DAP 2020, integrating academia and startups with incentives. Given the status of the participants in this webinar from the academia, industry, DRDO, and the services, I'm sure the discussions to follow will constructively lead to a better understanding of the structures and systems being established to enhance ingestion of the digitization and networking in the Indian Army and the armed forces, and the roadmaps to achieve the same in the future, and would seek cooperation and participation from all the stakeholders in this to assist us in the forces to get to the desired status at the earliest. Once again, in the end, sir, I'd like to thank you very much for inviting me to this introductory session of the St. George webinar. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, and thank you so very much. You detailed the various structures and controls for the digital transformation, both in the Army and the armed forces, and the agile procurement process which are on. And I really actually thank you for driving the initiative, like I said earlier. Thank you very much. I know we are running out of time, and we have some very eminent senior military leaders here, but I'll still take another 5 minutes and request Dr. Anand Agarwal, who's the CEO of the STL, the Sterlite Limited, and is passionate about driving technical advancements that impact everyday life. And they're also doing the NFS for in J&K and other places. Over to Dr. Anand Agarwal, please. I'll request you to be short. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lieutenant General Bhatia. I'll be short. Good morning, CDS General Rawat and all the esteemed guests. I feel privileged and proud to be invited to speak at this August gathering. And today in this time, I'll speak on one unified defense network, which will work as a great catalyst for the tri-services synergy as well as jointness. As General Rawat spoke about the fact that armed forces are at the cusp of transformation through integration, which will actually multiply the power of our forces. A unified defense network will be absolutely crucial in synergizing the Tri-Forces strategy, operations, as well as tactics. Lieutenant General Bhatia spoke about the fact that armed forces need to do more and more from less and less. And that is where I believe that the efficiency and efficacy of defense digitalization technologies come in. Digitization transformation is a strategic necessity. And Dr. Sudhir Kamath spoke at length about the next-gen technologies and fully networked defense with the needs of infinite bandwidth, storage, and computation. And Admiral Kumar talked about the shift from platform-centric ops to network-centric ops and for robust investment in communication. And finally, Lieutenant General Bhinder talked about the integration and interoperability between disparate systems. All the previous speakers highlighted the need for our country to develop digital defense capabilities, for which a unified network forms a key component. So I'll address three key pillars to use this one unified defense network as a strategic asset. First pillar is the fact that the unified defense network, which are converged, that is a combination of optical, wireless, satellite, scalable, extremely agile, and highly secure and intrusion-proof. We are very proud at Sterlite Technologies to have developed a fully Indian IPR-developed optical fiber-based intrusion-proof network as part of the NFS project for the armed forces in J&K, which now forms the communication backbone and adds a layer of stealth to military communications. While joint networks will bring strategic synergies, this vision of a technology-centric defense needs to trickle down to defense tactics as well. And here's the importance of modern tactile communications like software-defined radio, mobile integrated Mint network terminals, as well as network-in-a-box solution. We are extensively working, sir, on a full suite of tactile communications to enable seamless information sharing on ground, as well as enhancing speed of command. And this unified defense network for Tri-Forces is the foundation on which a digitally supreme defense will be built. Our second pillar is the Atmanirbhar technologies. As you said, we need to benchmark with the best in the world, but make and build in India. For all the defense technologies, being Atmanirbhar is imperative. The networks need to be advanced, cutting edge, and world class, and they also need to be fully Indian. We need to build a collaborative indigenous defense digitization ecosystem, which puts Indian defense forces in the pole position on digitization. While some of the biggest defense forces are investing in the digitization, they are taking big steps for network modernization. STL, along with the Indian Navy, is delivering a next generation naval communication network project with multiple data and communication centers along the Indian coastline and strategic islands with converged network, secure private cloud, as well as a network management ecosystem. The third pillar I want to talk about was the network going beyond communication as a security and as a force multiplier. The network can be used as a security element using sensing and surveillance to guard borders with technology, intrusion detection through fiber optic sensing, radar, sonar, UAVs, as well as on-ground action through command and control center. We at STL have developed our Sensron Plus solution for optical fiber sensing along with AI to be deployed along borders. So, and network can also act as a great force multiplier in terms of using the network as a backbone for implementing some advanced technology use cases, like autonomous technologies like drones, sensors, and surveillance for gathering intelligence, advanced concepts like robotic fencing on the borders, and connected soldiers with a range of wearable devices communicating over defense networks, and advanced battlefield concepts like Internet of Battle Things, with an integrated command and control and with big data and deep learning analytics for data-led decision-making. In conclusion, sir, this is, we believe, the new way of looking at defense networks. The three key pillars, the first one being a unified network for defense, the second one being Indian developed technologies, and the third one being use of network as a force of force multiplier beyond communications is key. And this will take us to the frontier of supremacy by enabling seamless information sharing, fusion of intelligence, and net centricity in operations. Thank you. Thank you, sir, for inviting us in this August gathering. And Jai Hind.
Thank you, Dr. Agarwal. Thank you so very much for this excellent, I would say, nichod kar diya aapne sab kuch. Thank you very much, the speaker. And I'm sure with industry leaders and technology, industry captains and technology leaders like you, we can move forward with indigenous solutions, with indigenous technologies, and make sure that the armed forces and the nation benefits from all together. At the end, I've taken, I think we have stayed our time. And I know everyone's time is very important. And thank you very much once again to the Chief of the Defense Staff, General Bipin Rawat, to the CISC and Chairman St. George, General Hari Kumar, to the Deputy Chief of the Army Staff, General Bhinder, to Dr. Sunil Kamath, the DG Medcos, Dr. Anand Agarwal, CEO of Steel Group, all the participants. I really thank you. It's been a very interesting inaugural session, and it'll lay down the guidance and the directions for the next 2 days of discussions.